5 years have passed since the mountains last held their breath for her, since soft fur brushed against hers in the quiet hush of dawn, since the warmth of life nestled at her side and called her mother now. There is only snow, wind and silence, and when metal bites into her leg, it is not the pain that makes her scream. It is the memory that won't fade. The faces she can no longer find, the bond she cannot bury. And far below a man hears her cry. A cry, not of fear, but of something older, deeper, something that once belonged to him too. He left it here years ago, buried in the cold, with a name whispered once, and never spoken again. But now that name pulls him up the mountain through time, through grief, through a silence that's no longer empty, because something has awakened, something that never died and never will. Each morning began the same as the one before. The man rose before the sun brewed bitter tea in silence and stared out at the snow-wrapped ridges without really seeing them. Journals lay stacked on the shelf filled with data and quiet notes, but his pen had long stopped moving. His work was observation, his life routine, the hum of a generator, the soft click of camera traps, the rustle of paper maps. But beneath it all lay a stillness too perfect, too practiced. He walked the ridgelines with steady steps, eyes scanning, but not searching. Not anymore, not since she disappeared. Not since the signal vanished and the collar went quiet. He told himself he let go. That wild things come and go and are not ours to keep, but on cold nights when wind howled, like something mourning. He would find himself reaching into his coat pocket, fingers brushing a worn tag, a name etched faintly by hand, just 5 letters fading but not forgotten. He would close his eyes and see her small, broken breathing in his arms. So many winters ago the fire still burned, but it no longer warmed it. Only lit shadows on the cave walls of memory, and he lived among them with quiet reverence and an ache he knew, longer questioned, only carried. It happened without thunder, without warning. A morning like any other, brittle with frost and pale light, but the nest was empty. No scent, no warmth, no tiny breath, just the cold, and a silence so absolute it roared inside. Her she searched with growing urgency, calling low and sharp, circling every stone, every crevice, as if the world had merely misplaced them, but nothing answered. Not the wind, not the earth, not even the ghosts, and something in her shifted. Something quiet. Snapped she stayed in that place for days, refusing food, refusing rest until the hunger clawed and the snow pressed in. And still she waited until she no longer knew what she was waiting for, only that it would not come. And when her body rose again, it was thinner, harder eyes, duller, her stride less fluid, more haunted. She moved through the mountains, not as a creature of the wild, but as a shadow of what once was no longer mother, no longer whole. And the world did not change. It kept snowing, kept howling as if it hadn't noticed the loss, while below the man stared at a blank screen where a blinking signal used to be. He checked again and again, re-entered coordinates, restarted systems, but the silence did not lift. The collar's voice was gone. And, with it, so was she. He told no one. He packed the receiver away, locked the cage of his chest, and went on as before, collecting data, setting traps, boiling water. But now every quiet was louder. Every echo returned to him, just a little too late, until days bled into months, into years, and still neither of them dared remember too fully or hope too deeply. The world had moved on, but they had not. They simply endured, surrounded by white, by quiet, by the long ache of a name not spoken out loud. Let's take a short pause for a moment. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from right now? Have you ever had someone, a person, or even an animal, remember you after years apart? A look, a gesture, a spark that said nothing was truly lost. If stories like this speak to something deep in you, hit that follow button. There's more ahead, more quiet moments, more connection, more of what stays with us long after the world thinks we've moved on. It started with a sound thin and sharp, threading through the wind, something too primal to be mistaken, too full of grief to be ignored, and before he even realized it, Arav was on his feet, heart pounding. Breath caught in his throat. The radio crackled, uselessly in the background, his tea-untouched snow swirling outside the tent flap. But he didn't feel the cold. He stood frozen in memory, years peeled back in an instant. The same mountains, the same silence, and then that. One time, that one cry. Not of fear, but of longing, and now, again, after all these years, it was back, and it knew his name, not in words, but in something older. He stumbled toward the ridge, half in dream, half in terror. Branches tore at his coat. Ice burned his skin. But none of it mattered, only the sound pulling him upward, dragging buried hope to the surface, and with every step came doubt. What if it wasn't her? What if she was gone? What if she'd forgotten? But somewhere deeper, something answered. She hadn't forgotten. Not really. Not her. Not the way she looked at him that last morning before vanishing into the white. She had paused then, and he remembered the pause more than the leaving now. With snow crushing underfoot, he ran toward that cry, toward what might be madness or mercy, and the fear twisted inside him tight. What if he found her and she turned away? What if she had moved on? What if he hadn't meant anything? But under that fear, something warmer flickered, something dangerous and real. The unbearable possibility that she had remembered too, and that she was calling for him now, not out of instinct, not out of desperation, but out of something stronger, something that never broke, even when everything else did. And so he climbed higher, through wind, through doubt, through time itself, following a sound he hadn't known he was still waiting for. He stepped out from the trees, slow, careful, barely breathing snow crunched softly under his boots. And she turned, not with a jolt, but with a stillness that was sharper than movement. Her body tensed but didn't recoil. Eyes locked onto his eyes, golden wide searching, and in that single glance the years fell away. Not in clarity but in weight, the kind of weight only memory carries. Her ears flicked, her breath came faster, her tail low, dragging in the snow. And still, she didn't move, didn't flee. The wind shifted and carried his scent to her, and something changed. Just a flicker, just a tilt of her head. Her muscles didn't coil to strike. They trembled to remember. He whispered her name, barely more than a breath, and the sound hung in the cold between them. Shearer, and there it was, her blink slow, deliberate, her chest rising, then falling. Not in panic, but in something deeper recognition. She took one step, not toward him, not away, just grounded as if claiming the space between them, and his eyes filled with salt. He didn't dare reach out. Not yet. He only knelt, voice catching in his throat, whispering things that had no words. And she watched with that same stillness, as if waiting for something to click into place. And then it did, a single breath, a shared stillness, and the air cracked with something wordless, ancient. Her body softened just slightly. Not submission, not surrender, but memory. And when he moved forward, slowly, hands working at the wire, his fingers fumbled, shaking, and her breath brushed his skin. But she stayed. She let him work, let him whisper, let him cry. And when the final loop of wire fell away, she didn't leap, she didn't vanish. She simply leaned in chest to his, knee-fur to fabric, and rested her weight against him, heavy, tired, real. And in that quiet, neither of them spoke. Neither needed to. There was no fear, no disbelief, only that sudden, impossible knowing that even through silence, through pain, through 5 unforgiving years, some part of them had never stopped listening, never stopped calling. And now finally, something had answered. The wind had gone still, and in the hush that followed she rose slow, deliberate. Her body tired, her legs stiff, but her eyes steady, and he stayed kneeling, heart open, throat raw. Not from effort, but from something looser, softer. She looked at him once, a long, deep look, then turned and disappeared into the white. No panic, no fear, only distance that felt different this time. Like breath, not absence, like space, not loss, and he waited, not expecting, not hoping, just breathing. And then 3 days later, the camera trap blinked a frame, frozen in silence. Her shape half in shadow, half in light, standing at the edge of the ridge, watching. And then more days, more glimpses, the shape in the trees, the print by the tent, the rustle outside the light steps at dawn, and each time she came a little closer. Never fully. They're never gone completely. And he changed too. Not all at once. Not dramatically, but in the small, steady ways, he started speaking aloud again. Even when no one answered, he unpacked the old journal and opened to the page with her name still etched faintly. He wrote her date, the new one, and smiled. He left out bits of meat near the tree line. Not bait, not a test, just offering. And once, one morning early, he found them gone, and paw prints beside them. Not scattered, not frantic, just placed. And one night, when the fire was low and he was almost asleep, he heard it a huffer, sound low and familiar. And when he opened the flap of the tent, she was there. Not close, not far, just watching, eyes glowing, not wild, not tame, but something in between. He didn't move, she didn't leave, and in that shared quiet, everything softened. Not healed, not fixed, but real, and slowly, piece by piece, they stepped back into the world. He began to laugh sometimes, not loudly, but honestly. She began to trust again, not with her body, but with her presence, and what had once shattered now held a different shape, not the same. Not lesser, just true, because some bonds don't need words or time to live. They only need memory and the quiet courage to return to what once hurt, to see if something still lives underneath. And it did for both of them. It did. Some connections don't fade. They simply go quiet, waiting beneath the noise of life, beneath time, beneath hurt. They sleep without promise, without guarantee. And yet when the moment comes, when two lost pieces cross paths again, something stirs, not with fanfare, but with stillness. And in that stillness there is recognition not of who they were, but of what they carried through the dark. She remembered, he remained, and in finding each other again, they did not go back. They moved forward, gentler, stronger, shaped by, lost but not ruled by it. Because true bonds do not ask to be held, they endure. And when they return, they do not come to remind us of what we lost, but to show us what was never truly gone.